ADHD family. I'm Yakini coming to you from ADHD Love. And today we have another episode of ADHD Love Parent Talk. And I'm very excited to have Alana on today. We are just going to get into talking about, her experience with ADHD, especially with her child, and then get into sharing some tips and tricks about, how does she manage her day along with her child's day. So Alana, let's just start off with you. Let's kick it off with, tell us a little bit about yourself and then tell us, why do you know so much about ADHD?
Okay, well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited. My name is Alana Moore, and then this little APCC behind my name just means that I'm an associate professional clinical counselor. I know it's a mouthful, but I did go to school, got my master's degree in marriage and family counseling. So I love the world of counseling and therapy. A little bit about why I know so much about ADHD is because before I even actually got into my master's program in college for my undergraduate degree, I went to school for child development. And I was so fascinated by like that topic in general and working with kids. But as a part of the program, we had to go and work with in a special needs classroom for about 3 months. And it was my favorite experience that I've ever had, like in college to date. So I loved that. And then after I graduated, I worked with an ABA therapy. So I worked with children with autism and ADHD for 4 years. And so that's why I gained more knowledge about ADHD in general, is because I fell in love with children with exceptionalities. And then I was able to work with them hands-on for 4 years. And so that's how I got introduced to ADHD, and I was able to see it manifest itself differently in the clients that I worked with.
Wow, that is very exciting. So you actually already had the experience coming in.
Yes, a little bit.
Wow. A little bit, right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because until you actually live with a child or live it with it yourself on a daily basis, it is different than working with children with ADHD. But you are ahead of the game than many of us are. So, as you know, my audience is parents, and well, I have audiences across the board, but my focus is parents. And like me, I did not discover ADHD until my daughter was 4 years old. So, even though I was recently diagnosed with it, we didn't talk about ADHD growing up. So you're like ahead of the game. So, okay, so talk a little bit about your son. So you found out that your son was diagnosed or did have ADHD. So what age was he actually diagnosed, and then what type?
So he was diagnosed at 3 years old, only 3, because I saw things when he was really little, even like before he was 1. I know it sounds like ridiculous that I saw it so early, but I really did. I was like, something is special about him. He has an extra strong will, and it's special. But at 3, I definitely saw it. So we went to the Child Guidance Center, it's called here. And he was diagnosed through observation and by assessments. I did a parent assessment of like behaviors that I saw or mannerisms that I saw. The teacher, his daycare teacher, did an assessment. And then the therapist that was observing him did an assessment. And he was diagnosed with the combined type, so inattentive and hyperactive and impulsive.
Oh, that's very interesting. So what about it was different for him to have the diagnosis of inattentive type than the hyperactivity? I mean, what did they see from their perspective?
Well, they definitely saw a lot of the hyperactivity, the impulsivity, like transitioning away from like a preferred item or wanting to gain access to a preferred item. There's a lot of impulsivity there. So they definitely observed that. So I knew that he was going to be diagnosed with hyperactive type. But the inattentive, there are times where he won't like And he was 3. So, I mean, a lot of 3-year-olds aren't like sitting for a long time, but it does take a lot of focus for him to kind of, he's extremely brilliant, as most kids, if not all kids with ADHD are, but it just took him, it takes him a long time to focus, especially if there is sensory overload. So in an environment where there's like a lot of noise or talking, he's very distracted, you know, and that's what they observed in all 3 settings. I observed it, teacher and therapist observed it in their office. So that's a little bit about what they observed. And then he actually just got an IEP at age 5 last year in school, and they just diagnosed a hyperactive type. So
oh wow,
that was interesting. Yeah, it was interesting. There's a different diagnosis, but they noticed pretty much the same things.
Okay. So once you had this diagnosis, I mean, how did you feel? How did you take it? I mean, especially someone who, you know, knows a little bit about ADHD prior to your son.
Yeah, so like you said earlier, it is different when it's your child. So it took me some time to accept it, because admittedly at first, you know, I thought like, now, like, why him? You know, his life is going to be so much more challenging having to overcome the hurdles of ADHD. That was my initial thought. Totally different now, but initially it was a sad day, you know, for me. And I just thought of like all the what ifs, you know. And so at first I really had a hard time with it, because I didn't know, you know, all the tools that he would need, how much support he would need. I've heard like all these different stories about children with ADHD and how they grow up, and some stories that scared me. So I was very, it took me a while to accept it. And then it also took me a while to accept that, like, I to the point where I always felt like I needed to explain myself to others. Like, okay, well, he's acting like this because he has ADHD. You know, when I would get looks or go to church or the grocery store, and I over explained. It was totally not necessary, but it was my own insecurity about it. And again, the thinking changed once I like focused on him alone and not, you know, me and how we look and all of these things. Like, once all that was gone, you know, I think totally differently. But initially, yeah, it was a little scary.
I can understand that. I do remember a time when I was also still getting used to the diagnosis and how he acted in certain situations. And I remember being in the store, and I probably told this to someone else too, but I remember being in the store and someone telling me that if you were in my classroom, you wouldn't act like this. And I'm like, really? Like, really? Now, I have comebacks all day today, but I didn't have a comeback at that moment because I was still learning about it, right? So it broke my heart when I heard things like that. And it didn't happen all the time, but it really stuck with me when it did. So yeah. I completely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I agree with those comments. Like, they're like, what? You know, I've heard those before. Again, not too much, but yeah, when you hear them, it's like a sting.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me some of the struggles that you have gone through, and then tell me what are some of the successes. So just a couple of things that, you know, now he is, you said 5 years old, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So what were some of the struggles, and then how did you manage those struggles to make them successes for him, or even for you as a parent?
Yeah, so I would say definitely some of the struggles that he had at like 3, mostly 3 and a little bit 4. I would like try to take him to extracurricular activities. I was very excited about getting him involved, and we tried gymnastics, and he was totally running around everywhere the whole session and like not with the group. And I was like, this is not going to work. And I was a little embarrassed. And then we tried to take him to a Taekwondo facility only at 3, and he wouldn't even sit for the meeting. And the representative was like, no, he's not ready. So that was just some of the challenges. I think at a younger age, it was more of a challenge with like he was very hyperactive, but he was verbal. He's been verbal, but not to the point where he can, explain to me how he's feeling at 3 and 4. It was very limited. So it was a lot of manifesting that whatever anxiety he felt, he manifested it by running off, like from place to place. It was very challenging. Because I wanted to get a sense of what was going on, and I felt like I didn't have a grasp on it as much. But since we have really worked on like identifying feelings, or him being able to tell me like, I'm scared in this situation, or there's too many people. Like now he's 5, almost 6. He's able to tell me a lot more of that. And he's able to kind of control some of that by like, we use coping skills like deep breathing, or honestly, we go for walks. Like if I notice he's too overloaded in the situation, we'll leave and we'll take breaks, because when he's overstimulated, he's extremely anxious. So I think I just learned through seeing what those challenges were. Like specifically in an environment with a lot of people, he was always running all over the place, And so instead of, wanting him to be like, okay, we're in this place, you need to learn to sit down and do this and do that. It's like, no, it's not, it's outside of his control, the anxiety that he feels, the sensory overload that he feels. So I'm going to meet him where he's at and take him out of the situation, give him breaks, and really like meet those needs to help him feel comforted when he's fearful or when he's anxious, because he just needs comfort. He doesn't need me to tell him deal with this anxiety and stay here just so that we can sit through this. It's not about that at all, so I had to go away from the traditional parenting and bring on some strategies that were more effective for him and his ADHD, and now they have turned into strengths because he's always telling me how he feels. He's always doing deep breathing. He's always catching, even if I look stressed or I'm like rushing, he's like, breathe, okay, take a moment. It's just so cute. So those things have drastically changed, and I'm proud to say he's been in Taekwondo now for a year. He was able to go back a year later, and it was much more successful. But I would definitely say some of the challenges were for me to understand where he was at, and then for him to at least try to identify some core emotions about it so that we can communicate together and work through it.
That's beautiful. And that communication piece is so key. And it was really interesting because I went through the same situation with Taekwondo also. But I remember recently my son had a conflict with another child, and he was willing to share his feelings about the situation. And one of the masters, she was so impressed with that because she says, even as adults, we don't share how we feel, right? And so it was very exciting to see, this 9-year-old who's been practicing for, 4 years now, being able to talk through his emotions, to see that. She was like, wow, that is just absolutely amazing. So yeah. So I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that makes a world of difference when you can kind of explain how you feel, why you feel. That's advanced, that he's even able to have that conversation. And I do think that makes a world of difference when the parent also is patient, takes time to see, okay, what's going on, instead of just assuming, the worst. Sometimes in public situations, we just want the behavior to go away, but I'm like, the behavior is not just going to go away, especially with children with ADHD, by just telling them, stop, that's not going to do anything. So you really have to meet them where they're at and help them through those situations as they come. So glad to hear that story.
Yeah. So tell me, if a parent is very new at this, so they just found out their child has ADHD, what tips or tricks do you have for them? What could you share to help them just even get through the first steps?
Honestly, and this is something I wish I did earlier on, I would definitely say just be patient with yourself, because ADHD is all about executive functioning, and it's not derived from parenting, anything you're doing with your parenting. I actually have clients that I work with that say, like, I'm just making things so much worse, and my child doesn't like me, and it's very internalized. And I could totally understand with some of the things you hear or see, that it feels personal, but it's not personal, and it's not a lot of it is out of their control, but that just because a lot of it is out of their control doesn't mean you can't help them manage it, you know? So I think that some people think from one extreme to the other, you know, either I'm a horrible parent or, you know, everything's out of their control, so why try? Like, obviously we're at a loss here, and it's absolutely not a loss. It's not something to mourn over, and I know that takes a while to work through those feelings.
Yeah.
But I would definitely say just be patient with yourself and know that this is nothing that has to do with you or your parenting or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then I would also say to be a part of some support groups that have been around for a while. That is very helpful because that'll automatically make you see that, wow, I'm not alone at all. Like, there's so many people that had to go through what I'm going through. I'm in the beginning stages, and now I'm seeing people that have, you know, dealt with this for a while, and that's comforting, honestly, to see kind of what their approaches are, what they've utilized, like strategies they've utilized. So I definitely say be patient, and then be open-minded. So steering away from some of that traditional parenting and expectation of like, well, my child is supposed to, maybe get away from the supposed to, you know, and just meet them where they're at. A lot of times children with ADHD are about 2 to 3 years behaviorally younger than the actual age. And even me, I'm working through that now because my son he's almost 6, but he likes to hang out with younger people or, you know, be playful, and that's totally fine, you know, whereas before I'm like, oh no, we have to do what the 5-year-olds are doing, you know, because academically he's great, but if he wants to be playful in whatever way he wants to be playful, you know, we just meet them where they're at. So I would definitely say just be very open-minded, because your child is different in such a special way, and meeting them where they're at is really going to foster that confidence in them, because they also have a lot of times lack of confidence because they feel that they're different, you know, and it's labeled that they're different. And so really empower them to see what their strengths are, and just be patient with yourself and be patient with your child.
I love that. I love that. And I also love the part of meeting them where they're at. That was one of the things that I used to struggle with when it came to certain daycares, because they wanted to put him, you know, in this, actually both of them wanted to put them in this beautiful box, right? And
Yeah.
like, my children don't fit in that box. And it's not like you can't get the response for them that you need. You just have to meet them where they are and figure out what works for them. But say the least, they weren't willing to do that. So once I got them in the right school system, they were absolutely willing to do that. And it just made things so much better.
Yes.
Yes.
That's true. The right teachers, them having that knowledge of what your child needs versus assuming what they need,
Yeah.
totally makes a difference.
Yeah, it does. It does. So do you talk to your child about it? I mean, does he know that he has ADHD?
Yes, because I wrote a book about him that I'll share later. So yeah, he definitely knows that he has ADHD. And so when I first started talking to him about it, I did present it even before I wrote my book, as a superpower. Like, I presented it as like a strength, you know, like, look at all these cool things you do. You think so fast, you know, you're so smart. Like, and then he's so observant, you know, he catches all these things and he spews it out verbally, like all these things that he's catching. And I'm like, that's amazing. Look at how your mind works. So I started introducing it in that way, that you have a special mind. It works so fast and it's so strong. You have so much knowledge. You're very creative. Like, even when he'd be building or be very particular with how he was building things, and things would be very linear and all these things, I'm like, wow, like, your mind is so special. So I did started talking to him, like, through his activities. I started kind of like identifying how special that his mind was and how powerful that it was. And then also on the flip side, when he was having challenges, I would say, like, I noticed that, you know, being around a lot of people, you know, it can be scary. It feels scary. I know you say that, you know, what are some of the things you're thinking about? And he goes, well, I'm hearing too many loud noises. There's too many people talking. And I'm like, yeah, you know, and sometimes with, you know, the way that your brain works. And I wouldn't use ADHD for a while until I like basically wrote the book. I would just explain to him like, you know, the way that your mind works. I could understand like this is uncomfortable for you, so we can take breaks. That's totally fine. And I would explain it in that way, that like your
I
mind is so
see.
special. There's some challenges that you have, and I see that, and I'm able to work with you on those. And then there's so many strengths. But then when I wrote the book, that's where now every day he's like, ADHD, it's a superpower, it's a superpower. And he's able to identify what it was that we've been talking about for years. You know, like, okay, it's my ADHD that's, you know, bringing all these special things to my mind and all of these, it's the ADHD that makes me so special. And, but again, I wouldn't use ADHD because I didn't think he would, you know, really understand it at 3 and 4.
Right.
But now he does grasp it a little bit better. So now I'm actually using like, oh, you're ADHD, and not to use it as a crutch, but this is a superpower. And that's also why I call it a superpower, so that when he has challenges that he's not always like, oh, but this isn't, it's because of my ADHD. You know, I don't want him to ever say that. You know, so I highlight it as a strength, you know, and then I identify its challenges because they're there. You know, they're not absent. It's not absent of challenges, but I don't want him to use it also as a crutch.
That makes sense. So for parents who are nervous or about nervous or are just not sure if they should tell their children because of the reasons they don't want their children to use it as a crutch, plus they feel like it's a label. So what would you say to the parents? You know, what are some of those positive things that you can say to the parents that they can share? And you said one of it is being, you know, seeing it as a superpower, but what else in terms of just to make them feel at ease and sharing it with their child? Yes, this is what you have, and these are the reasons, these are the struggles you're going to go through, and
Mm-hmm.
these are the good things about it. I mean, what would you say to them in general?
Yeah, so I think it has a lot of strengths. They're, like I said earlier, they're very, very creative. Their mind works, it's especially creative. Some of the things that they see, like their imagination is so vivid. And so just sharing with them that they have like beautiful thoughts and to always share them, like for parents to encourage your child to continue to share those thoughts. And then also, I really think that they are very fair, you know, they're very like into fairness. And that's beautiful
Justice.
that they're like, yes,
Yes, yes.
justice and fairness. So it's like, you know what, I love that, you know, when you get something, you make sure that someone else has what you have. You don't ever want somebody to have less than what you have. You're very fair, you know, and kind, and you catch things very quickly. Like you see things that mommy or daddy doesn't even see, you know, like things that you notice we don't even notice. That's so cool that you pointed that out. You're teaching me things, you know, so kind of putting him in that role of like, I'm not just here to teach you, but you have such a special mind. You're teaching me things that I don't even know that I don't even see. So I would say it like that because ADHD is so complex and they catch so many things and their mind goes so fast, you know, that we can't even keep up. And that's a gift, you know. So I would definitely encourage parents to identify the things that their children do well and then relate that to maybe how their mind works.
That sounds good. So you had talked a little bit about your book. So what made you decide to actually write it? I mean, what came over you saying, you know what, this would be something great to put out?
Yeah, so honestly, one of my mentors from college, I told her I was going to write a book in college, and I did not follow through with writing a book at that time. But then this year, she told me 2020 is the year you need to write this book, and she gave me deadlines, and I was like, okay. And when I'm very driven by deadlines and you know accountability, so but the idea that I had in college was totally like not what I felt was needed for me to write right now. It had been in my spirit to write, you know, a book about my child. Like I always, since he was born, I'm like, I want to do something or write something about him to show him the lens that, you know, I see him in. But then I'm like, it's not just about the lens that I see him in. It's really, you know, who he really is, you know, what he embodies as a person that is so special about him. I want to catch that. So I would just like observe him and smile about all these different things that he would do around the home or in public, just like his bright personality. And I was just motivated to, based on just my observation of just little things that he did, I'm like, I want to write a book about like his ADHD and how that makes him so special, because I had come a long way from, again, being fearful and feeling like it was a hindrance to feeling like, no, this is actually like limitless possibilities here, because he has a gift, not something that's, you know, a curse. So I just observed him, and then I would wake up in the middle of the night and have these ideas of like, okay, this is how I want to put it. And so I'd write that down. And then I just began writing, and I actually wrote it in a pretty short amount of time, because I started in March of this year. And then I think I completed it in like April or
Oh,
June.
wow. That's
You
amazing.
know, yeah, it wasn't too long because I just got all these ideas on a daily basis. So I ended up writing the book, and he was the inspiration, but I also wanted it, I wanted it to, him to be the depiction of the main character, to depict who he really was, but in a way that can also speak to other children with ADHD, you know, so that they can feel empowered as well. So it's very personalized to my son, but it's amazing how it's been able to reach so many other people, because, you know, other parents see this in their children as well. And I love that we're able to relate on that way, and we're able to empower them. So yeah, really, he was just my inspiration for the book.
That's nice. Do you have a copy of the book with you? Can you hold
Yes,
it up?
I do.
Yeah, very good. Hold up. So
Oh,
ADHD super, there you go. ADHD,
yes,
my superpower. Very nice. Very nice. And you say you
yes.
can get that on Amazon?
Yes, you can get it on Amazon, and there's a Kindle version of it. I like the paperback. Oh, it's just for kids, you know. But if parents want to read it, a lot of parents that actually don't have children have read it already, and been inspired by it. So if you want the Kindle version, it's on Kindle as well. But yeah, it's called ADHD is My Superpower, and you'll be able to find it just searching that.
Nice. Very nice. So just to close it up, do you have any last minute thoughts or tips or anything that you wanted to share that we missed? Just, for the parents?
Um, I have one last thing about self-care.
Mhm.
So for parents,
Yeah.
so I know that being a mom of a child with ADHD or ADHD children, um, it can be, you know, your days are full. Your days are energetic, exciting. You guys are doing a lot of things. And I love that part of the day as well. And I'm sure you guys do too, just taking your children out, letting them be, engaging in all these different activities. But then there's also, I don't want to ignore that there are challenging days, you know, where your child is just not feeling well, or is frustrated, or might have a tantrum or an outburst or a meltdown, maybe in school or with you. And I think that you have to fill your cup back up. That's what I call it. You know, fill your cup back up with some positivity, because I know that sometimes when those things happen, we could have thoughts that are not so positive, or we can be down on ourselves. But I really encourage parents to take time for themselves. If you're dating or you're married, then please take some date nights, adult time, to just go out and have fun. I mean, within its limitations during COVID, but just go and do something fun. And then if it's just you, honestly, and you have somebody that can watch your child, just take a day to go do something that you love, you know, or that you enjoy. It took me a while to get to that place where I felt like I can't take time for myself. Like my life is dedicated to just this. Like I didn't feel comfortable. And then I got to a point where I'm like, no, I need that though. In order for me to be the best parent that I can be and recharge, I have to also tend to myself. And I want my child to see that message too, that you take care of yourself. You know, I know you like to give to others, but you have to take care of yourself first. So, and it's something that's a healthy, selfish thing to do. So I definitely say take care of yourself. And even if you can't have someone that watches your children when they're sleeping, just watch a show, light a candle or something, and just be in the zone of being able to relax and not think about anything. I think putting your mind at that type of peace is something that we all need. So I just wanted to add the piece of make sure you engage in some self-care.
I love it, Alana. I love it. So if they have any questions for you, can you just remind the audience of your Instagram handle and if there's any other way that they can reach you?
Yes. So my Instagram name is No More Chains, but my last name is Moore, Moore. So it's NOMOORE Chains, all one word. You can find me there, or my Facebook page for the book is called ADHD is My Superpower. So that's where you can find the book. But I'll also, if you need to message me or reach out, you can reach out on that page as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. It was fun talking to you. And I'm so glad to connect with you and talk with you during this episode. So thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I loved it.
All right. Well, you have a wonderful rest of your day.
All right, you too.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.